Chief Petty Officer Dominic Harlan's fist closed around Reagan Cole's hair and yanked her head back until her neck cracked. She was 22 years old, 5'4", and had killed 6 men in a Syrian basement while keeping 3 wounded SEALs alive with one hand and a dead operator's pistol in the other. The 4 Navy officers watching from the black SUV knew exactly who Harlan had just touched. They'd watched her drag their brothers out of a kill zone 8 months ago. His career was already over. He just didn't know it yet. If you're watching from anywhere in the world, hit subscribe and stay until the end. Drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this story travels. The rain at Naval Station Norfolk fell in gray sheets that turned the training ground into a mud pit. Reagan Cole stood at attention with 43 other sailors, while Chief Petty Officer Dominic Harlan paced in front of them, his boots splashing through puddles he didn't bother to avoid. She was the smallest person in formation, the youngest, the only woman. Harlan stopped directly in front of her. Water dripped from the brim of his cover onto her face. She didn't blink. "Petty Officer Cole." He said her name like it tasted bad. "Medical course. Transferred from Fleet Hospital. That correct?" "Yes, Chief." "You know what we do here, Cole? Security Forces Training, Chief." "Security Forces Training." He leaned closer. His breath smelled like coffee and cigarettes. "We train sailors to fight, to protect assets, to engage hostile threats. You ever engage a hostile threat, Cole?" Reagan's jaw tightened. 8 months ago, she'd put 2 rounds through a man's chest at 3 feet while his blood sprayed across her face. She'd felt his last breath hit her cheek. "I've completed all required combat training, Chief." Harlan laughed. The sound was sharp and ugly. "Combat training? You mean the medical corps version? The one where they teach you to hide behind Marines while they do the real work?" Behind her, someone snickered. She didn't turn to see who. "I asked you a question, Cole." "I completed Fleet Marine Force training, Chief. Qualified on all standard weapons systems." "Fleet Marine Force." Harlan's lip curled. "So you spent 8 weeks learning to not shoot yourself in the foot. Congratulations. That doesn't mean you belong here." He moved on to the next sailor, but Reagan felt his attention still on her, like a weight pressing against her spine. She'd been at Norfolk for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of this. Every day, Harlan found new ways to remind her that she didn't belong. What he didn't know, what no one here knew, was that she'd spent 4 months attached to SEAL Team 4 before this assignment. What he didn't know was that she'd performed emergency surgery in a collapsed tunnel while insurgents tried to breach her position. What he didn't know was that Commander Nathan Voss himself had requested her for his team after watching her save a wounded operator during a training exercise that went wrong. But her service record had been scrubbed. Her clearances were under review. And until the paperwork cleared, she was just another sailor from the medical corps who'd somehow ended up in a security forces pipeline she didn't belong in. At least that's what everyone believed. Harlan ran them for 6 miles through the rain. No brakes, no water. Just his voice cutting through the downpour, calling out anyone who fell behind. Reagan kept pace. Her lungs burned, her legs screamed. But she'd run further than this in Syria, carrying 60 pounds of medical gear through streets filled with rubble and bodies. This was nothing. Seaman Kyle Decker pulled up beside her at mile 4. He was 24, built like a linebacker, with the kind of confident smirk that said he'd never been told no in his life. "You're doing pretty good for a corpsman," he said between breaths. Reagan didn't respond. "Chief's got it out for you. Everyone can see it." Still nothing. "I'm just saying, if you want to make friends here, you might want to show a little personality. People are starting to think you're stuck up." Reagan's eyes stayed fixed forward. I'm not here to make friends. No. What are you here for? To keep a promise, she thought. To a dead man whose blood is still under my fingernails no matter how many times I wash my hands. To train, she said out loud. Same as everyone else? Decker laughed. Sure, whatever you say, Ice Queen. He surged ahead, joining a group of sailors near the front of the formation. Reagan heard him say something, heard the others laugh, didn't care. She'd learned a long time ago that what people thought of you didn't matter. What mattered was what you did when everything fell apart. The memory came without warning. It always did. Syria, 8 months ago. The tunnel. The mission had been straightforward on paper. SEAL Team 4, 12 operators inserting into Raqqa to extract a high-value intelligence asset. Reagan was attached as combat medical support, the first female corpsman ever assigned to the team for a direct action mission. Commander Voss had fought for her inclusion. Told the brass that he'd seen her work during a training accident at Camp Pendleton, that she'd saved a Marine's life with nothing but a pen, a chest seal, and hands that didn't shake. The other SEALs had been skeptical. Polite professional, but skeptical. She was 21 years old, 5'4", and looked like she should be taking college exams instead of clearing rooms with Tier 1 operators. Petty Officer First Class Gabriel Torres had been different. He was the team's lead breacher, 34 years old, with kind eyes and a photograph of his 6-year-old daughter taped inside his helmet. On the flight in, he'd sat next to Reagan and talked about his little girl. Her name was Maya. She wanted to be a veterinarian. He'd promised her a puppy when he got home from this deployment. You scared? He asked. Reagan had checked her medical kit for the 10th time. Should I be? Torres smiled. Probably. Everyone is their first real op. The ones who say they aren't are either lying or crazy. Which one are you? I'm a father. I'm terrified every time I go out. But I do it anyway because that's the job. That's what it means to be part of something bigger than yourself. He'd paused. You'll do fine, Doc. I've seen the way you move, the way you think. You've got something most people don't. What's that? The ability to stay calm when everything's on fire. He tapped his temple. That's what matters, not size, not strength. This. 4 hours later, Torres was dead. And Reagan had made a promise over his body that she intended to keep for the rest of her life. The run ended at the training compound. Harlan lined them up again, counted heads, made note of the 4 sailors who'd fallen out and would face remedial training tomorrow. Reagan's chest heaved. Her uniform was soaked through, clinging to her body, but she stood at attention without swaying. Harlan noticed. His eyes narrowed. Cole. Front and center. She stepped forward. Every eye in the formation was on her. You finished that run looking fresh as a daisy. Either you weren't pushing hard enough, or you've been holding out on us. He circled her slowly. Which is it? I was pushing Chief. Then how come you're not sucking wind like everyone else? Because I've run through minefields. Because I've carried wounded men on my back through collapsed buildings. Because I've pushed through pain that would make you cry. Good conditioning, Chief. Good conditioning. He stopped in front of her. Where'd you get that yoga class? The formation laughed. Reagan didn't react. Cross-country chief. High school and college. Cross-country. Harlan's voice dripped with contempt. That explains a lot. You're used to running away from things. Reagan felt her control slip for just a moment. Her jaw tightened. Her hands clasped behind her back formed fists. Harlan saw it. His smile widened. Something you want to say, Cole? No, Chief. You sure? Because it looked like you had an opinion forming behind those eyes. Don't rise to it. Don't give him what he wants. You've faced worse than this. You've faced men who wanted to kill you, and you won. No opinion, Chief? Harlan leaned in close. So close she could see the broken blood vessels in his nose, smell the staleness of his breath. You don't belong here, he whispered. Everyone knows it. I know it. And before this training is over, you're going to know it too. He stepped back, raised his voice for the formation to hear. Dismissed for chow. Back here at 1300 for combatives training. His eyes found Reagan one more time. Don't be late, Cole. I've got something special planned for you. The mess hall was loud with conversation. Reagan sat alone at a corner table, eating mechanically, not tasting the food. A tray clattered down across from her. She looked up to find a sailor she didn't recognize, a woman maybe 30, with short-cropped hair and the insignia of a gunner's mate on her collar. Mind if I sit? Reagan shrugged. Free country. The woman extended her hand. Petty Officer 2nd Class Diana Okafor. I'm an instructor here. Small arms. Reagan shook it. Reagan Cole. I know who you are. Everyone does. Okafor stabbed at her food with a fork. You're the medical corps transfer Harlan's been trying to break. Is that what people are saying? Among other things. Okafor's eyes were sharp, assessing. They're also saying you don't react to anything, that you just take whatever he dishes out and keep moving. Is there a question in there somewhere? Okafor set down her fork. I've been at this command for 2 years. I've seen Harlan wash out a lot of people. Women, mostly. He's got a thing about it. Thinks we don't belong in combat roles. Reagan's expression didn't change. What do you think? I think ability doesn't have a gender. I think Harlan's a dinosaur who got passed over for senior chief twice and blames everyone but himself. Okafor leaned forward. I also think there's something off about you. Off how you move like an operator, not like a corpsman, not like someone who spent their career in hospitals. Okafor's voice dropped. Where were you really stationed before you came here? Reagan held her gaze. That's not something I can discuss. Can't or won't, both. Okafor studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, fair enough. She stood, picking up her tray. Watch yourself in combatives this afternoon. Harlan's been running his mouth about teaching you a lesson, whatever that means. I can handle myself. I believe you. Okafor paused. That's what worries me. The combatives' pit was a 30-foot circle of hard-packed sand surrounded by concrete barriers. By 1300, the full training class had gathered around its edges 44 sailors waiting to see blood. Reagan stood near the back. Her body was loose, relaxed. Her mind was quiet. She'd learned to fight in the Fleet Marine Force program. Learned more during her time with SEAL Team 4. The operators had worked with her every day, drilling techniques until they became reflex. Torres had taught her personally, showed her how to use her size as an advantage, how to redirect force, how to put a man twice her weight on the ground before he knew what happened. The trick, he'd told her, is making them underestimate you. Let them think you're weak. Let them commit. And when they do, you end it. Harlan stepped into the center of the pit. His sleeves were rolled up, revealing forearms corded with muscle and decorated with faded tattoos. Combatives training is about learning to survive when your weapon fails and your team isn't there to save you. His voice carried across the gathered sailors. It's about understanding that in close quarters, hesitation means death. He scanned the crowd. His eyes found Reagan. Cole, get in here. The sailors around her shifted. Someone whispered something. Someone else laughed. Reagan stepped forward, crossed the barrier, entered the pit. Harlan circled her slowly. I need a demonstration partner. Someone who can show these sailors what happens when you face an opponent who's bigger, stronger, and more experienced than you. Yes, Chief. The scenario is simple. I'm a hostile combatant. I've disarmed you. You have to escape or neutralize me. He smiled. Ready. Reagan set her feet, raised her hands. Ready. Harlan moved fast, faster than she expected. His hand shot out and grabbed her collar, yanking her toward him while his leg swept at her ankle. She went with the motion instead of fighting it, used his grip as a pivot point, twisted her body and drove her elbow toward his ribs. He blocked. Barely. His eyes widened for just a fraction of a second. Then his face hardened. Not bad. He reset his grip. Let's see what else you've got. The next 3 minutes were a blur of movement. Harlan attacked with increasing intensity, throws, joint locks, strikes. Reagan defended, countered, slipped away. She didn't try to beat him, just survived, just kept moving, just refused to go down. The sailors watching had gone silent. Even Decker, who'd been smirking at the start, now stared with his mouth slightly open. Harlan was breathing hard. Sweat ran down his face despite the cool air. He'd expected this to be easy, expected to put her on the ground in 30 seconds and prove his point. Instead, she was still standing. Enough. He stepped back, hands raised. That's the demonstration. Return to your position, Cole. Reagan nodded, turned to leave the pit. That's when his hand closed around her hair. The yank was brutal, unexpected. Her head snapped back so hard her vision blurred. She felt individual strands tear free from her scalp. Harlan's voice was a snarl in her ear. I said you could move like a fighter. I didn't say you could fight. The formation was frozen. No one spoke. No one moved. Reagan's hands came up instinctively. Every technique Torres had taught her screamed to be used. She could break his grip, shatter his wrist, put him on the ground gasping. But she didn't. Because if she did, her cover was blown. Everything she'd endured for the past 3 weeks would be wasted. The investigation into her actions in Syria, the clearance review, the careful administrative process that Commander Voss was shepherding through Navy bureaucracy, all of it would collapse. So she stayed still. Let him hold her hair. Let the pain lance through her skull. You don't belong here, Harlan hissed. Say it! Reagan's jaw clenched. No. He yanked harder. She felt her neck strain, felt tears spring to her eyes from the pure physical pain. Say it. No, Chief. His free hand grabbed her collar. Twisted. The fabric dug into her throat and tore. The rip was loud in the silence. Reagan's uniform split at the neck, exposing her undershirt and the patch she'd hidden beneath it. The SEAL Team 4 unit patch. And below it, pinned to her undershirt, the Special Operations Combat Medic badge. Harlan saw it. His grip went slack, his face drained of color. What the hell? Reagan straightened, pulled free from his loosened grasp. Her eyes met his, and for the first time since arriving at Norfolk, she let him see what was really behind them. Not a scared corpsman, not a quota fill, not a woman who didn't belong. A warrior who'd walked through fire and come out the other side carrying men twice her size. Behind the formation, 4 car doors opened simultaneously. 4 figures in service dress blues stepped out of a black SUV that hadn't been there an hour ago. Commander Nathan Voss walked across the training ground with Lieutenant Commander Derek Okonkwo, Lieutenant Commander Jenna Reyes, and Lieutenant Marcus Webb behind him. Okonkwo was limping slightly. He'd taken shrapnel in his right leg 8 months ago in a Syrian tunnel. Reagan had clamped his femoral artery with her bare hands while insurgents tried to kill them both. Voss stopped at the edge of the pit. His voice was calm and cold. "Chief Petty Officer Harlan, step away from my operator." Harlan didn't move. Couldn't move. He stood frozen, staring at the badge on Reagan's chest like it might bite him. "I said step away!" Voss's tone hardened. "That's an order." Harlan stumbled backward. His hands hung at his sides. His mouth opened and closed without sound. Voss entered the pit. He stopped in front of Reagan, looked at her torn uniform, the tears she was fighting to hold back the red marks on her neck from Harlan's grip. "You okay, Doc?" Reagan's voice was steady. "Yes, Commander." "Good." Voss turned to face Harlan. "Do you know who you just assaulted, Chief?" Harlan's voice was a croak. She's just a corpsman. She's Petty Officer 2nd Class Reagan Cole, combat medic attached to SEAL Team 4 for Operation Grey Falcon." Voss stepped closer. "She's also the woman who saved 3 of my men in Syria by performing emergency surgery under fire while killing 6 enemy combatants with a pistol she took from a dead operator." The formation had begun to murmur. Decker's face was white. "Her Bronze Star nomination is sitting on the CNO's desk right now," Voss continued. "She was placed here under administrative cover while her clearances were updated. Her orders specifically stated she was to be treated as a standard trainee with no special recognition or accommodation." He paused. Let that sink in. What they did not authorize was physical abuse. What they did not authorize was assault. What they did not authorize was a 18-year chief with an inferiority complex trying to destroy a decorated combat veteran because he couldn't handle being shown up by a woman half his size. Okonkwo stepped forward. Without a word, he rolled up his pants leg, revealing a thick, ugly scar that ran from his knee to his thigh. "You see this chief, she did this. In the dark, under fire, with her bare hands. Because that's what she does. She saves people." His voice shook. "And you just yanked her around by her hair like she was nothing." Harlan's legs gave out. He sat down hard in the sand, staring at Reagan like he was seeing a ghost. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I didn't know." "You didn't ask." Voss's voice held no mercy. "You saw a young woman who didn't fit your idea of what a warrior looked like, and you decided to break her. You didn't care who she was. You didn't care what she'd done. You just wanted to prove a point." He turned to face the gathered sailors. "Let this be a lesson to every single one of you. The size of someone's body tells you nothing about the size of their courage. The sound of their voice tells you nothing about what they've survived. And assumptions." He looked back at Harlan. "Assumptions will destroy your career faster than any enemy ever could." Voss reached into his pocket and pulled out a folded document. "Chief Petty Officer Dominic Harlan. Effective immediately, you are relieved of all training duties pending investigation by Naval Criminal Investigative Service. Charges being considered include assault conduct unbecoming and abuse of authority." He dropped the document in Harlan's lap. "Your career is over. You just don't know it yet." The aftermath unfolded in slow motion. Military police arrived within 20 minutes. Harlan was escorted off the training ground in handcuffs, his face blank with shock. The sailors who'd laughed at Reagan, who'd called her Ice Queen and quota fill, couldn't meet her eyes. Decker approached her as the crowd dispersed. His cockiness was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like shame. "I didn't know," he said. "I'm sorry. You should have treated me like a fellow sailor regardless of what you knew or didn't know." Reagan's voice was flat. "That's the whole point." She walked away before he could respond. Okafor found her behind the barracks an hour later. Reagan was sitting on an ammunition crate, staring at nothing. Her torn uniform had been replaced with a fresh one, but the red marks on her neck were still visible. "Hell of a day," Okafor said. "You could say that?" "The whole base is talking about it. About you." Okafor sat down beside her. "There's a video. Someone recorded Harlan grabbing you. It's already spreading." Reagan closed her eyes. "Great. For what it's worth, people are on your side. What he did was wrong, and everyone knows it now. It was wrong before they knew who I was. That's what people don't understand." Reagan opened her eyes. "If I was just a regular corpsman, if I'd never been to Syria, never saved anyone, never done anything special, what he did would still be wrong. But nobody would care. They'd just say I couldn't hack it, that I should have expected it." Okafor was quiet for a moment. "You're right. And that's the problem." "Yeah," Reagan stood. "It is." That night, alone in her quarters, Reagan sat on her rack and pulled Torres's knife from her footlocker. It was a simple blade. Black handle, 4-inch steel. He'd given it to her the night before Operation Grey Falcon said every good corpsman needed a good knife. She'd used it to save his teammates' lives. And she'd used it afterward to make a promise she intended to keep forever. She rolled up her sleeve and looked at the thin white scar on her palm. A single line barely visible now, but she felt it every time she closed her hand. "I'm still here, Gabe," she whispered, "still trying to do it right." Her phone buzzed, a text from Commander Voss. "NCIS investigation moving forward. Multiple prior complaints against Harlan discovered. This goes deeper than one incident. We need to talk tomorrow." 100. "My office. You did good today, Doc. Torres would be proud." Reagan set the phone down, picked up the photograph she kept in her footlocker, the one Torres had given her a copy of before the mission. Him and Maya, his daughter. She was grinning at the camera, missing her 2 front teeth. Torres had his arm around her, laughing at something she'd said. He never got to give her that puppy. Reagan pressed the photograph to her chest and let the tears finally come. She didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she was back in the tunnel. The smell of blood and cordite. The sound of Torres gasping his last words while she tried desperately to stop the bleeding. "Tell Maya I tried to come home." She'd made that call. 3 days after returning stateside. Found Torres's wife through the casualty assistance officer and asked if she could speak with her. The conversation had been the hardest thing Reagan ever did. Harder than the tunnel. Harder than the firefight. Harder than dragging wounded men through collapsed passages while bullets sparked off the walls. Elena Torres had listened in silence while Reagan told her what happened. How her husband had died. How brave he'd been. How much he'd talked about Maya and the puppy he was going to get her. When Reagan finished, Elena was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "He called me the night before that mission. Told me there was a young corpsman on the team. Said she reminded him of Maya. Said if anything happened to him, I should know that she'd be in good hands." Reagan had broken down completely, sobbed into the phone like a child, while Elena Torres, the widow, the grieving wife, comforted her. "He believed in you," Elena said. "Whatever you're feeling right now, whatever guilt you're carrying, you need to let it go. Gabe wouldn't want you to spend your life blaming yourself for something you couldn't control. I should have saved him. You saved 3 other men. You did everything you could." Elena's voice cracked. "Don't let his sacrifice mean nothing. Go out there and be the person he saw when he looked at you. That's how you honor him." Reagan had made a promise that night. The same promise she'd carved into her palm. Every life she saved from now on would be for him. Every person she trained, every skill she passed on, every moment she refused to give up, all of it would be Gabriel Torres's legacy. And no one, not Harlan, not the Navy's bureaucracy, not anyone would stop her from keeping that promise. The sun rose over Norfolk at 0547. Reagan was already dressed, already running through the base's empty streets, already pushing her body toward exhaustion. She ran past the training compound, where Harlan had grabbed her, past the barracks where the other sailors were still sleeping, past the waterfront where ships sat in gray rows waiting for deployment. She ran until her lungs screamed and her legs burned, and the memories faded into the rhythm of her footfalls. Then she ran some more. At 0745, she stood outside Commander Voss's temporary office in the Special Operations Liaison building. Her uniform was fresh. Her hair was regulation perfect. The marks on her neck had faded to faint pink lines that would be gone by tomorrow. She knocked. "Enter." Voss was behind his desk, surrounded by paperwork. Okonkwo sat in one of the chairs facing him, his damaged leg stretched out awkwardly. "Cole?" Voss gestured to the empty chair. "Sit." She sat. Waited. Voss leaned back. NCIS found 3 prior complaints against Harlan, all from female sailors, all buried by his previous commands. The pattern goes back at least 5 years. Reagan's stomach tightened. 5 years. 5 years of women being told they didn't belong, being pushed out, being broken. Voss's jaw clenched. And nobody did a damn thing about it until yesterday. What happens now? Court-martial. Probably. At minimum, he's looking at reduction in rank, loss of pension, bad conduct discharge. Voss paused. There might be criminal charges depending on what else NCIS finds. Okonkwo spoke up. There's already talk about a congressional inquiry. Someone leaked the video to a reporter. It's going to be a big story. Reagan closed her eyes. She'd wanted to serve quietly, keep her head down, honor Torres's memory without fanfare or attention. Now she was about to become a symbol. "I know this isn't what you wanted," Voss said, reading her expression. "But sometimes the mission chooses you. What happened yesterday isn't just about Harlan. It's about every woman who's been told she doesn't belong in uniform, every sailor who's been abused by someone in authority, every person who's been underestimated and written off." He leaned forward. "You have a choice, Cole. You can request a transfer, disappear into some quiet assignment and let this blow over. Or you can stay here, finish what you started, and use this moment to change something." Reagan thought about Torres, about the promise, about Maya, who would grow up without her father, about all the other Reagans out there being broken by their own Harlans, with no SEALs watching from black SUVs to save them. "I'll stay," she said, "but I have conditions." Voss raised an eyebrow. "Name them." "The training program here is broken. It's not just Harlan. It's a culture that lets people like him thrive. If I stay, I want to help fix that. I want to build something that trains people the right way, that holds leaders accountable, that doesn't let anyone fall through the cracks." She met his eyes. "I want to make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else." Voss smiled. It was the first genuine smile she'd seen from him since Syria. "Doc, I was hoping you'd say that." He reached into his desk and pulled out a folder, slid it across to her. "This is a proposal I've been working on with WARCOM, a new training initiative for combat medical personnel attached to special operations units. We need someone to design the curriculum, select the instructors, and run the pilot program." Reagan opened the folder. Read the first page. Felt her breath catch. Gray Falcon Medical Support Course, named after the operation where Torres died, where she was born into the person she'd become. "We want you to lead it," Voss said, "if you're willing." The photograph of Torres and Maya flashed through her mind. his kind eyes, his voice telling her she had something special, the ability to stay calm when everything's on fire. "I'm willing," Reagan said. "When do we start?" 2 weeks after Harlan's arrest, Reagan stood in front of her first class of 12 corpsmen and felt Torres watching from somewhere beyond the fluorescent lights. "My name is Petty Officer Second Class Reagan Cole," she said. "I'll be your lead instructor for the Gray Falcon Medical Support Course. Before we begin, I need you to understand something." She paused. Let the silence stretch. "Half of you won't finish this program. Not because you're not good enough, because you'll decide the cost is too high. The hours are brutal, the standards are unforgiving, and the skills you'll learn here will put you in situations where failure means someone dies." A hand went up. Young guy, maybe 20, with nervous eyes. "Yes." "Petty Officer Cole, is it true you killed 6 insurgents in Syria while performing surgery?" Reagan's jaw tightened. The story had spread through the Navy like wildfire after the Harlan incident. Every version got more exaggerated. In some tellings, she'd killed a dozen men. In others, she'd single-handedly held off a battalion. "What's your name?" "Hospital man Chen, ma'am." "Chen, let me tell you what actually happened in Syria." She stepped closer to him. "I watched a good man die because I couldn't save him. I held his hand while he bled out and told me to give a message to his daughter. And then I spent the next 20 minutes doing everything in my power to make sure the same thing didn't happen to 3 other men." Chen's face paled. "That's what this course is about. Not glory, not heroics, keeping people alive when everything is trying to kill them." She looked across the room. "If you're here because you want to be a badass, leave now. If you're here because you never want to watch someone die when you could have saved them, stay." Nobody moved. "Good. Let's begin." The first week was classroom instruction, anatomy, trauma physiology, the specific injuries caused by modern weapons systems. Reagan taught from experience, not textbooks describing wound patterns she'd seen with her own eyes and procedures she'd performed with her own hands. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo came in on day 3 to show the class his leg. "This scar right here," he said, pulling up his pants leg, "is where Petty Officer Cole clamped my femoral artery with nothing but her fingers and a piece of paracord. I was losing a pint of blood every 30 seconds. She stopped the bleeding in under a minute." Chen raised his hand again. "How did you stay calm, ma'am, with all that happening?" Reagan exchanged a glance with Okonkwo. He nodded slightly. "I wasn't calm," she admitted. "I was terrified. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the tourniquet twice. But terror doesn't matter if you've trained enough. Your body knows what to do even when your mind is screaming." "That's the whole point of this course," Okonkwo added. "We're going to train you until the procedures are automatic, until you can do them in your sleep in the dark with bullets flying over your head." After class, Okonkwo pulled Reagan aside. "NCIS wants to talk to you again. They found something in Harlan's service record." "What kind of something?" "A death. 8 years ago during a training exercise at Coronado. Female sailor drowned during a water survival drill Harlan was supervising." Okonkwo's expression was grim. "The investigation was closed as an accident, but one of the witnesses just came forward with new information." Reagan felt cold spread through her chest. "What information?" "The witness says Harlan held her under. Said she was struggling too much, making a scene, embarrassing him in front of the other instructors." Okonkwo's voice dropped. "He held her under until she stopped moving." 8 years. Reagan's hands curled into fists. He killed someone 8 years ago, and they just covered it up. The witness was scared. Harlan threatened him, said if he talked, his career was over. Okonkwo shook his head. "But after what happened to you after seeing Harlan in handcuffs, the guy decided he couldn't stay quiet anymore." "Who was she?" "The woman who drowned." Seaman apprentice Maria Delgado, 20 years old. She'd been in the Navy for 6 months. 20 years old. The same age Reagan had been when she first deployed. "I want to know everything about her," Reagan said. "Everything they buried." The NCIS interview happened the next morning. Special Agent Carla Bishop was a compact woman with gray-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. "Petty Officer Cole, I need to ask you about your interactions with Chief Petty Officer Harlan prior to the assault." Reagan sat straight in her chair. "What do you want to know?" "Did he ever make comments about female sailors in your presence, express views about women in combat roles?" "Every day. He told me I didn't belong. Told me the Corps was lowering standards to let women in. Told me I should go back to the hospital where I came from." Bishop made notes. "Did he ever touch you before the incident on the training ground?" Reagan hesitated. "Petty Officer Cole. Once, about a week before. He grabbed my arm during a drill, squeezed hard enough to leave bruises. Said I was moving too slow." "Did you report it?" "No." "Why not?" Reagan looked at her hands. "Because I thought I could handle it. Because I didn't want to be the woman who complained. Because I thought if I just kept my head down and did my job, he'd eventually leave me alone." Bishop set down her pen. "You're not the only one who made that calculation. We've identified 6 other women who served under Harlan over the past decade. All of them experienced similar treatment. None of them reported it." "Because reporting doesn't work." Reagan's voice hardened. "Because when women report, they're told they're overreacting. They're moved to different commands while the abuser stays in place. They're labeled as troublemakers, and their careers suffer. That's what we're trying to change." "With respect, Agent Bishop, I've heard that before." Bishop leaned forward. "I understand your skepticism. But this case is different. We have video evidence. We have witnesses. We have a pattern of behavior stretching back years. And now we have Maria Delgado." Reagan's breath caught. "You believe she was murdered?" "I believe there are serious questions that were never properly investigated. The original inquiry was conducted by Harlan's commanding officer, at the time a man who happened to be his former roommate at OCS." Bishop's expression was hard. "We're reopening the case. And if we find what I think we're going to find, Harlan isn't just looking at assault charges. He's looking at homicide." That night, Reagan couldn't sleep. She lay in her rack, staring at the ceiling, thinking about Maria Delgado. 20 years old. 6 months in the Navy. Probably joined because she wanted to serve her country, wanted to prove something, wanted to be part of something bigger than herself. And someone had held her under the water until she stopped breathing. Reagan pulled out her phone and searched for Maria's name. Found an obituary from a small town in New Mexico. Found a photograph of a smiling young woman with dark hair and hopeful eyes. She saved the picture. Added it to the folder where she kept Torres's photo. 2 more ghosts to carry. 2 more reasons to keep going. The next morning, she pushed her students harder than ever. "Again," she shouted as Chen fumbled with a chest seal. "Your patient is dying. Every second you waste is blood they're losing." "I'm trying, ma'am." "Trying isn't good enough. Do it again." Chen's hands were shaking. Sweat dripped down his face. He'd been at this for an hour, repeating the same procedure over and over while Reagan critiqued every movement. "Your angle is wrong. You're creating an air pocket. Again." "Ma'am, I can't." "You can. You will." Reagan grabbed his wrist, guided his hand to the correct position. "Feel that. That's where the seal needs to go. Now do it yourself." Chen tried again. This time the seal held. "Better. Now do it 20 more times until you can do it without thinking." Okafor, who'd been watching from the doorway, waited until the students broke for lunch before approaching. "You're pushing them hard." "Not hard enough." Chen looked like he was about to cry. Good. Better he cries here than freezes up when someone's bleeding out in front of him. Reagan grabbed a water bottle, drank half of it in one long swallow. Torres pushed me the same way. I hated him for it at the time. Now I understand why. Okafor studied her face. When's the last time you slept more than 4 hours? Sleep is a luxury. Sleep is a necessity. You're no good to your students if you collapse from exhaustion. Reagan set down the bottle. There's a woman named Maria Delgado who never got to grow old. Never got to have a career, a family, a life. Because a man like Harlan decided she didn't belong and nobody stopped him. That wasn't your fault. No. But making sure it doesn't happen again is my responsibility. Reagan's eyes were hard. I'll sleep when this is over. The call came 3 days later. Reagan was in the middle of a field exercise, teaching her students how to perform emergency procedures in simulated combat conditions when her phone buzzed with a message from Commander Voss. Come to my office immediately. Bring no one. She left Okafor in charge and drove across the base with her heart pounding. Voss was waiting with Agent Bishop and a Navy JAG officer Reagan didn't recognize. Sit down, Cole. She sat. NCIS completed their preliminary investigation into the Delgado case. Voss's face was unreadable. They found evidence that Harlan falsified training records to cover up what happened. They found testimony from 3 witnesses who saw him hold her under the water. And they found something else. He slid a photograph across the desk. Reagan picked it up. It showed a young woman in a hospital bed, face swollen and bruised, one eye completely shut. Who is this Petty Officer 3rd Class Jennifer Walsh? She served under Harlan at Great Lakes in 2019. He beat her unconscious during a training exercise and told everyone she fell down a ladder. Reagan's hands trembled. There are more. We've identified 11 victims so far, spanning 15 years. Agent Bishop's voice was flat. Broken bones, concussions, sexual harassment, and Maria Delgado, who we now believe was murdered. The room tilted. Reagan gripped the edge of her chair. 15 years. He did this for 15 years and nobody stopped him. Nobody wanted to see it. The JAG officer spoke for the first time. Harlan was a decorated veteran, Bronze Star, multiple combat deployments. He had powerful friends in the command structure who protected him. Where are those friends now? Being investigated. 3 commanding officers have been placed on administrative leave pending review of their handling of complaints against Harlan. Reagan looked at the photograph again. Jennifer Walsh's ruined face stared back at her. What happens now? Harlan's being charged with 2nd-degree murder in the death of Maria Delgado. Additional charges of assault conduct unbecoming and obstruction of justice. His trial is scheduled for next month. And the others, the women he hurt. We're reaching out to all of them, offering support, giving them the chance to testify. Reagan set down the photograph. Her hand was steady now. The trembling had stopped, replaced by something cold and hard. I want to testify too. You're already on the witness list. Not just about what he did to me, about all of it. About the system that protected him, about the culture that let this happen. She met Voss's eyes. I want everyone to understand that Harlan wasn't an exception, he was a symptom. Voss nodded slowly. That's a big stage, Cole. Are you sure you're ready for it? Reagan thought about Torres, about Maria Delgado, about Jennifer Walsh, and all the other women whose faces she hadn't seen yet. I've been getting ready my whole life, sir. I just didn't know it until now. The news broke 2 weeks before the trial. Someone leaked the NCIS investigation to the press. Within hours, Harlan's face was everywhere. Networks ran segments about the Navy's culture of abuse. Politicians demanded hearings. The Secretary of the Navy issued a statement promising comprehensive reform. and Reagan became the center of the storm. Reporters camped outside the base gates trying to get interviews. Her name trended on social media. People she'd never met wrote articles about her, calling her a hero, a symbol, a warrior. She hated every second of it. "You need to make a statement," Voss told her. "Control the narrative before someone else does." "I'm not a spokesperson. I'm a corpsman." "You're a lot more than that now, whether you like it or not." Reagan stared out the window of his office. Beyond the glass, she could see the training ground where Harlan had grabbed her hair, could almost feel his fist closing around the strands. "Torres told me once that being part of something bigger than yourself meant accepting responsibility you didn't ask for." She turned back to Voss. "He was right. I'll make the statement." She wrote it herself. Stayed up all night choosing every word. The next morning, she stood in front of a camera and spoke to the nation. "My name is Reagan Cole. I'm a Navy hospital corpsman and a combat veteran. 2 months ago, a chief petty officer assaulted me during a training exercise because he believed women didn't belong in uniform." She paused. Let the words settle. "But this isn't about me. It's about Maria Delgado, who died 20 years too young because no one protected her. It's about Jennifer Walsh and the other women whose names you'll never know, who suffered in silence because they were told reporting wouldn't matter." Her voice strengthened. "I'm not a hero. I'm not special. I'm just someone who happened to be in the wrong place at the right time with the right witnesses watching. Most victims don't have that. Most victims get buried, forgotten, dismissed." She looked directly into the camera. "That has to change. Not with statements or reforms or committees. With action. With accountability. With all of us deciding that protecting abusers is no longer acceptable, no matter how many medals they have or how powerful their friends are." She took a breath. Maria Delgado deserved better. We all do. The video went viral within hours. 30 million views by nightfall. Messages poured in from women across all branches of the military, sharing their own stories, thanking Reagan for speaking out. But one message stood out from all the others. It came through official Navy channels, flagged as urgent from an address Reagan didn't recognize. Petty Officer Cole. "My name is Elena Torres. I'm the widow of Petty Officer First Class Gabriel Torres. I've been watching the news. I've been watching you. I think it's time we talked." Reagan read the message 3 times. Her hands were shaking again. She'd made that phone call 3 years ago, told Elena how her husband died, sobbed while a grieving widow comforted her. She'd never expected to hear from her again. "I'm stationed at Norfolk," she typed back. "I can come to you whenever you're ready." The response came within minutes. "I'm already here. I flew in yesterday. There's a coffee shop on Hampton Boulevard, the one with the blue awning. I'll be there tomorrow at 0900. There's something about Gabe you need to know." Reagan stared at the screen until the words blurred. Something about Gabe she needed to know. What could possibly be left to learn about a dead man she'd watched die in a Syrian tunnel? She didn't sleep that night either. At 0847 the next morning, Reagan walked into the coffee shop with the blue awning. Her uniform was pressed. Her hands were steady. Her heart was hammering so hard she could feel it in her teeth. Elena Torres sat at a corner table. She was smaller than Reagan expected, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that held a sadness so deep it seemed bottomless. "Petty Officer Cole." Elena stood. "Thank you for coming." "Mrs. Torres." "Elena, please." She gestured to the empty chair. "Sit." Reagan sat. A waitress approached. Elena ordered coffee for both of them without asking. "I watched your statement," Elena said. "The one about Maria Delgado, about accountability." "I meant every word. I know. That's why I'm here." Elena reached into her purse and pulled out a worn envelope. "Gabe left this for you. He wrote it the night before the Syria mission. Told me if anything happened to him, I should give it to the young corpsman on his team. Reagan's breath stopped. I didn't send it before because I wasn't sure you were ready. Wasn't sure I was ready. Elena slid the envelope across the table. But after watching what you did, after seeing who you've become, I think he'd want you to have it now. Reagan's fingers trembled as she picked up the envelope. Her name was written on the front in handwriting she'd never seen but somehow recognized. He talked about you constantly, Elena continued. Said you reminded him of Maya. Said you had something special, something most people never develop. The ability to see what needs to be done and do it no matter how scared you are. He was the special one, not me. He would have disagreed. Elena's eyes glistened. He saw something in you, Reagan. Something worth believing in. That's why he pushed you so hard. That's why he trusted you with his teammates' lives. Reagan couldn't speak. Her throat had closed completely. Read the letter, Elena said softly. And then if you're willing, I'd like to tell you about the man my husband really was. The parts of him you never got to see. Reagan opened the envelope with shaking hands. The letter inside was a single page handwritten in neat block letters. Doc, if you're reading this, I didn't make it home. That's okay. Every operator knows the risks. What matters is what we leave behind. You're going to feel guilty. You're going to replay every moment looking for what you could have done differently. Don't. I've seen you work. I know exactly how good you are. Whatever happened, you did everything possible. Here's what I need you to remember. The mission isn't about glory. It's about the person next to you. Your job is to keep them alive so they can go home to their families. That's it. That's everything. You've got a gift, Reagan. Don't waste it trying to be someone you're not. Be exactly who you are. That's enough. That's more than enough. Tell Maya her daddy loved her more than anything in the world. Tell her to chase her dreams and never let anyone tell her she's not good enough. And tell yourself the same thing. You're ready. You've been ready since the day I met you. Now go prove it. Torres. The tears came so fast, Reagan couldn't stop them. She sat in that coffee shop with Elena Torres and cried like she hadn't cried since the tunnel, since the moment Gabriel Torres died in her arms and took a piece of her soul with him. And for the first time since Syria, she started to believe she might actually be okay. Elena Torres stayed in Norfolk for 3 days. She told Reagan about Gabriel in ways the Navy files never could. About the boy who grew up in East Los Angeles, who joined the military to escape gang violence and found a family he never knew he needed. About the father who video-called his daughter every night he could, who recorded bedtime stories on his phone for the deployments when calls weren't possible. About the husband who left love notes hidden around the house, small pieces of paper that Elena still found in jacket pockets and kitchen drawers years after his death. He wasn't perfect, Elena said on their second morning together. He had nightmares, woke up screaming sometimes. The things he saw over there changed him in ways I couldn't understand. How did you handle it? I loved him anyway. That's what you do when someone gives you their whole heart. You accept the broken pieces along with the beautiful ones. Reagan thought about the scar on her palm, the broken piece she carried everywhere. Maya asks about him constantly, Elena continued. She's 9 now, old enough to understand he's not coming back, but not old enough to understand why. What do you tell her? The truth. That her father was a hero who died protecting people who needed him. That he loved her more than anything in the world. Elena's voice caught. That he's still watching over her even if she can't see him. Do you believe that... Elena was quiet for a long moment. I have to. Otherwise, what's the point? On the 3rd morning, Elena handed Reagan a small velvet box. Gabe's trident, the one he wore on his first deployment. She pressed it into Reagan's hands. I want you to have it. I can't. This belongs to Maya. Maya has his medals, his flag, his photographs. She has everything she needs to remember her father. Elena closed Reagan's fingers around the box. But you're the one carrying his mission forward. You're the one training the next generation of people who'll save lives the way he did, the way you did. Reagan opened the box. The gold trident gleamed against black velvet worn smooth by years of wear. He would have wanted you to have it, Elena said. I know that as surely as I know anything. Reagan couldn't speak. She just held the trident against her chest and let the tears fall. The trial began on a gray Monday in October. The courtroom was packed. Press filled every available seat. Cameras waited outside, ready to capture every moment of the proceedings. Naval brass sat in the front rows, their faces carefully neutral. Reagan arrived early wearing her dress blues, Torres's trident pinned beneath her ribbons, where no one could see it but her. Commander Voss met her at the entrance. How are you holding up? Ask me after I testify. You don't have to do this, you know. Your written statement is already in evidence. You could let the other witnesses carry the weight. Reagan shook her head. Maria Delgado can't speak for herself. Jennifer Walsh is still too traumatized to face him. Someone has to look Harlan in the eye and tell the truth. Then let's go. The prosecution called Reagan to the stand at 1400. She walked past Harlan without looking at him, took her seat, placed her hand on the Bible and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. The prosecutor, a Navy commander named Sarah Chen, approached her with measured steps. Petty Officer Cole, please describe your first interaction with Chief Petty Officer Harlan. Reagan's voice was steady. It was my first day at the Security Forces Training Command. He introduced himself to the class, and then spent 10 minutes explaining why women didn't belong in combat roles. He looked directly at me the entire time. Did he single you out specifically? Yes. He asked me where I'd served before. When I told him I was transferred from Fleet Hospital, he laughed and asked if I'd be able to handle seeing real blood. How did you respond? I didn't. I'd been ordered to maintain my cover, to avoid drawing attention to my previous assignments. And what were those previous assignments? I was attached to SEAL Team 4 as a combat medic for Operation Grey Falcon in Syria. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Harlan's defense attorney shifted in his seat. During that operation, what happened? Reagan told them. Not the sanitized version from her commendation citation. The real version. The blood and the fear and the smell of burning flesh. Torres dying in her arms. The 6 men she'd killed with a pistol she'd taken from a dead operator's hand. Dragging wounded SEALs through collapsed tunnels, while her own blood mixed with theirs. By the time she finished, half the courtroom was in tears. Even the judge had to pause to compose himself. Petty Officer Cole, did Chief Petty Officer Harlan know any of this when he assaulted you? No, sir. My service record had been classified. He had no way of knowing who I really was. And in your opinion, would it have mattered if he had known? Reagan looked at Harlan for the first time. His face was pale, his eyes fixed on the table in front of him. No, she said, because what he did to me wasn't about me. It was about what I represented. A woman in a space he believed belonged to men. My qualifications, my combat experience, my decorations, none of that would have changed his mind. He'd already decided I didn't belong before he ever met me. The defense attorney stood for cross-examination. His name was Lieutenant Commander William Reeves, a sharp-faced man with a reputation for dismantling witnesses. Petty Officer Cole, you testified that Chief Petty Officer Harlan grabbed your hair during a training exercise. Is that correct? Yes. And this occurred during a combatives demonstration? Yes. Isn't physical contact normal during combatives training? Reagan's jaw tightened. Normal physical contact, yes. Grabbing someone's hair hard enough to tear it from their scalp is not normal. It's assault. But you didn't report the incident immediately, did you? No. Why not? Because I was operating under cover orders that required me to maintain a low profile. Reporting would have blown that cover. So you made a choice to stay silent. I made a choice to follow orders. There's a difference. Reeves smiled slightly. You also testified that Chief Petty Officer Harlan made comments about women in combat roles. Did he ever explicitly threaten you? He didn't need to. The threat was implicit in everything he did. That's your interpretation. That's the truth. Petty Officer Cole, isn't it possible that Chief Petty Officer Harlan was simply maintaining the high standards his training program was known for? That his treatment of you was no different from his treatment of any underperforming candidate? Reagan leaned forward. I wasn't underperforming. I outscored every other candidate in every measurable category. Marksmanship, physical fitness, tactical scenarios. I was the best performer in that class, and he still tried to break me. Perhaps he saw potential in you that required additional pressure to develop. He saw a woman he wanted to humiliate. Nothing more. Reeves changed tactics. You mentioned that you killed 6 enemy combatants in Syria. Did you enjoy it? The courtroom went silent. Objection, Commander Chen said immediately. Relevance goes to the witness's mental state, Your Honor, her capacity for violence. The judge considered. I'll allow it. The witness may answer. Reagan stared at Reeves. When she spoke, her voice was ice. No, I didn't enjoy it. I still see their faces when I close my eyes. I still hear the sounds they made when they died. I did what I had to do to protect the men in my care, and I would do it again if I had to. But enjoy it. She shook her head slowly. Only a monster would enjoy taking a life. And I'm not a monster. Reeves hesitated. He'd expected to rattle her. Instead, she'd rattled him. No further questions. Commander Chen stood for redirect. Petty Officer Cole, one final question. You could have let this go. You could have accepted a quiet transfer and moved on with your career. Why didn't you? Reagan looked at the packed courtroom, at the naval officers in the front row, at the press scribbling in their notebooks, at Harlan, who still wouldn't meet her eyes. Because Maria Delgado deserved better. Because Jennifer Walsh deserved better. Because every woman who's ever been told she doesn't belong deserves someone willing to stand up and say enough. She paused. And because a man I loved like a father died teaching me that you don't walk away from fights that matter. Even when they hurt. Even when they cost you everything. You stand up. You speak the truth. And you trust that the truth will be enough. Her voice broke on the last word. No further questions, Chen said softly. The prosecution rested their case after 2 weeks of testimony. 11 women had taken the stand. 11 stories of abuse, harassment, and fear. The evidence against Harlan was overwhelming. His own training records falsified to hide incidents. Emails discussing how to handle complaints quietly. A pattern of behavior stretching back 15 years. But the most devastating testimony came from Master Chief Petty Officer Thomas Garrett, who'd served as Harlan's supervisor at Coronado 8 years earlier. I knew something was wrong with Delgado's death. Garrett said, his voice thick with shame. The official report didn't match what I saw at the scene. But Harlan was connected. He had friends in high places. When I tried to raise concerns, I was told to drop it. And you did. Yes, God help me, I did. Garrett wiped his eyes. I've lived with that for 8 years. Watched Harlan get promoted, get decorated, get praised, while Maria Delgado rotted in a grave in New Mexico because I was too much of a coward to speak up. Why are you speaking up now? Garrett looked at Reagan sitting in the gallery. Because that young woman over there showed me what courage looks like. Real courage. The kind that doesn't care about careers or consequences. The kind that just does what's right. He turned back to the prosecutor. I should have been her 8 years ago. Maybe Maria would still be alive if I had been. The defense called their witnesses the following week. Character witnesses testified to Harlan's dedication, his service record, his Bronze Star. Fellow instructors claimed his methods were demanding but fair. A psychologist suggested that the stress of multiple combat deployments had affected his judgment. None of it mattered. When the verdict came, Reagan was sitting between Voss and Elena Torres in the front row of the gallery. On the charge of second-degree murder in the death of seaman apprentice Maria Delgado, we find the defendant guilty. Elena grabbed Reagan's hand and squeezed so hard it hurt. On the charge of assault against Petty Officer Second Class Reagan Cole, we find the defendant guilty. The charges continued. Guilty on all counts. Assault, conduct unbecoming, obstruction of justice, falsifying official records. Harlan sat motionless as the verdicts were read. His face showed nothing. But Reagan saw his hands trembling on the table in front of him. When the last verdict was announced, his head dropped. His shoulders shook. And for the first time since she'd met him, Dominic Harlan looked like exactly what he was. A broken man who'd finally run out of people to break. The sentencing hearing happened 3 weeks later. Harlan received 30 years at the United States Disciplinary Barracks at Fort Leavenworth. Dishonorable discharge. Forfeiture of all pay and allowances. Reduction to the lowest enlisted rate. The 3 commanding officers who'd covered up complaints against him were court-martialed. All 3 were convicted of dereliction of duty and conduct unbecoming. 2 received prison sentences. The 3rd was dismissed from the service. The Secretary of the Navy announced a comprehensive review of harassment reporting procedures across all commands. A new victim advocacy program was established with dedicated resources for service members who experienced abuse. The changes were named the Delgado-Torres Protocol, honoring both Maria Delgado and Gabriel Torres. Reagan learned about the naming from a text message sent by Admiral Patricia Vance, the first female Vice Chief of Naval Operations. You did this. Never forget that. She stared at the message for a long time. The day after sentencing, Reagan visited Maria Delgado's grave. It was a small cemetery in a small town in New Mexico. The headstone was simple. Maria's name, her dates, and a quote from her favorite poem. I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul. Reagan knelt in the dirt and placed a single white rose against the stone. I'm sorry I never knew you, she said quietly. I'm sorry no one protected you when you needed it. I'm sorry it took 8 years for anyone to care enough to fight for you. The wind rustled through the desert sage. But I promise you this. Your death wasn't meaningless. The things that happened because of what they did to you, the changes, the reforms, the people who will be protected because we finally said enough. That's your legacy. That's what your life meant. She touched the headstone. Rest now, Maria. We've got it from here. Elena Torres was waiting when Reagan returned to Norfolk. She stood at the gate of the base, Maya beside her. The little girl had Torres's eyes dark and kind and impossibly deep for a 9-year-old. Maya wanted to meet you, Elena explained. I've been telling her about you since the trial. She had questions I couldn't answer. Reagan knelt down to Maya's level. Hi, Maya. I'm Reagan. Maya studied her with unsettling intensity. My mom says you were with my daddy when he died. Reagan's heart clenched. Yes, I was. Was he scared? The question hit like a bullet. Reagan thought about lying, thought about softening the truth. But Torres's letter burned in her memory. Tell Maya her daddy loved her more than anything in the world. A little bit, she said honestly. Everyone gets scared sometimes, but mostly he was thinking about you. He asked me to give you a message. Maya's eyes widened. What message? He said to tell you that he loved you more than anything, that he wanted you to chase your dreams and never let anyone tell you you're not good enough. Reagan's voice shook. He said he was proud of you, so proud. Maya's face crumpled. She threw her arms around Reagan's neck and sobbed into her shoulder. Reagan held her tight, felt the little girl's body shake with grief that was too big for her small frame. And somewhere in that moment, something shifted inside her. The guilt she'd carried since Syria didn't disappear, but it loosened, made room for something else. Purpose. Connection. The beginning of peace. Elena watched them with tears streaming down her face. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for giving her that. Reagan looked up at her over Maya's head. He saved me, she said. The least I can do is make sure his daughter knows how amazing he was. That night, Reagan sat in her quarters with Torres's letter and his trident spread out before her. She read the letter again, the words she'd memorized by now but couldn't stop returning to. You're ready. You've been ready since the day I met you. Now go prove it. She picked up her phone and called Commander Voss. Cole, it's 2300. Everything okay? Everything's fine, sir. I just had a question. Go ahead. The Grey Falcon program, the training initiative. When do we start? Voss was quiet for a moment. We've been waiting on you. Didn't want to push while the trial was happening. The trial's over. I'm ready. Are you sure you've been through a lot? No one would blame you for taking some time. Reagan looked at Torres's trident, at the letter, at the scar on her palm that would never fully fade. I've taken enough time, sir. There are people out there who need what I can teach them. People who'll save lives because of what they learn. I'm not going to make them wait any longer. Voss exhaled. Okay, I'll make the calls. We can have the program operational within 30 days. Make it 14. That's aggressive. That's necessary. Another pause. Then Voss laughed. You know something, Cole Torres was right about you. What do you mean? He told me once that you were going to change things, that you had something special, something that couldn't be taught, the ability to make people believe in themselves. Voss's voice softened. I didn't understand what he meant until I watched you testify, until I saw 11 women find their courage because you found yours first. Reagan's throat tightened. Get some sleep, Cole. We've got a lot of work to do. Yes, sir. She ended the call. For a long moment, she sat in silence, holding the trident against her heart. Then she pinned it to her uniform right next to her combat medic badge, where everyone could see it. She was done hiding. The Grey Falcon Medical Support Course launched 12 days after Reagan's call to Voss. 24 candidates reported for training. 16 men, 8 women. All of them had volunteered, knowing the program's reputation, knowing the woman who led it, knowing that failure was almost guaranteed, and success meant deployment to places the news never mentioned. Reagan stood before them on the first morning with Torres's trident visible on her chest. Look around you, she said. Half of you won't be here in 2 weeks. Not because you're not good enough. Because you'll discover that good enough isn't enough for what we do. A hand went up. Young woman, maybe 21, with a determined jaw, and eyes that reminded Reagan of herself, 3 years ago. Yes. Petty Officer Cole, my name is Hospitalman Second Class Vera Santos. I read about what you did in Syria. I read about the trial. I volunteered for this program because I want to be like you. Reagan's expression didn't change. Don't. Santos blinked. Ma'am? Don't want to be like me. Want to be better than me. Reagan stepped closer. I made mistakes in Syria that I still have nightmares about. I lost someone who should have lived. I carry that weight every single day, and I'll carry it until I die. She looked across the assembled candidates. This program isn't about creating heroes. It's about creating professionals who can function when everything falls apart. Who can keep their hands steady when their minds are screaming? Who can make impossible choices and live with the consequences? Her voice hardened. If you're here for glory, leave now. If you're here because you watched a video of me and thought it looked exciting, leave now. But if you're here because you never want to be helpless when someone's dying in front of you, stay. We have work to do. Nobody left. The first week was brutal. Reagan pushed them harder than Harlan had ever pushed anyone. 18-hour days. Sleep deprivation exercises. Simulated casualty scenarios that lasted until candidates collapsed from exhaustion. Medical procedures performed in the dark in the rain with instructors screaming in their faces. 6 candidates dropped by day 3, 2 more on day 5. Santos held on. Reagan watched her struggle through a trauma simulation on day 6, her hands shaking as she tried to pack a wound, while fake blood sprayed across her face and a speaker blasted combat sounds at deafening volume. Your patient's dying, Reagan shouted over the noise. Move faster. I'm trying. Trying isn't good enough. He's lost 2 pints of blood while you fumbled with that gauze. Santos's hands steadied. She completed the procedure in 30 seconds. Not fast enough for combat, but close. Better. Again. They ran the drill 12 more times. By the end, Santos's hands weren't shaking at all. After the exercise, Reagan found her sitting alone behind the training facility, crying silently into her hands. Santos. The young woman scrambled to her feet, wiping her face. Ma'am, I'm sorry. I'll be ready for the next evolution. Sit down. Santos sat. Reagan lowered herself to the ground beside her. You did well today. Santos stared at her. I almost failed the first 3 attempts. And then you didn't fail. That's the point. Reagan looked at the stars beginning to appear overhead. I cried every night for the first month of my Fleet Marine Force training. Hid in the bathroom so nobody would hear. Convinced myself I'd made a terrible mistake. What changed? Nothing. I just kept going. Reagan turned to face her. The crying doesn't make you weak, Santos. It makes you human. What matters is whether you show up the next day anyway. Santos was quiet for a moment. Can I ask you something personal? Go ahead. The man who died, Torres. Do you still think about him? Reagan touched the trident on her chest. Every day. Every single day. Does it ever get easier? No. But it gets different. The grief becomes part of you instead of something that's happening to you. Reagan stood, brushed off her uniform. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be worse. Worse than today. Much worse. Santos almost smiled. Good. Reagan walked away, wondering if she'd looked that determined at 21. Wondering if Torres had seen that same fire in her eyes. The answer, she realized, was probably yes. Week 2 brought the field exercises. Candidates were dropped in remote locations with minimal equipment and wounded simulated casualties. They had to stabilize their patients, navigate to extraction points, and keep their charges alive through conditions designed to break them. 16 candidates remained. By the end of the week, only 11 were left. Chen, the nervous kid from Reagan's original class, had become one of the standouts. His transformation was remarkable. The hesitation was gone, replaced by a quiet competence that reminded Reagan of the best operators she'd served with. You're different, she told him during a rare break in training. Chen shrugged. I had good teachers. It's more than that. You believe in yourself now. Someone believed in me first. That made all the difference. Reagan thought about Torres, about Elena's words, about the letter she carried everywhere. Pass it on, she said. When you're on the other side of this, when you're the one training the next generation, remember what it felt like to be doubted, and don't let anyone feel that way if you can help it. Yes, ma'am. The call came on day 15. Reagan was supervising a night navigation exercise when Voss's name appeared on her phone. She stepped away from the observation post to answer. Commander, we have a situation. Voss's voice was tight. SEAL Team 4 is deploying tonight. Emergency mission in Yemen. They're requesting you specifically. Reagan's heart stopped. Me? The team medic was injured in a training accident yesterday. Broken collarbone. They need a replacement who knows their procedures, their protocols, their people. Voss paused. You're the only one who fits the criteria. But the program, my students. Lieutenant Commander Okonkwo can take over temporarily. He's already agreed. Reagan looked at the darkness where her candidates were moving invisible shapes navigating by starlight. What's the mission? Classified. I can tell you it's high risk. Insertion into hostile territory. Potential for significant enemy contact. When do I leave? Helicopters on the ground in 30 minutes. Reagan closed her eyes. She'd thought she was done with combat. Thought she'd found her place as an instructor, a leader, someone who shaped warriors instead of being one. But the mission always came first. Torres had taught her that. I'll be ready. She found Okonkwo waiting at the helipad with a gear bag already packed. I heard you might need this, he said, handing it over. How'd you know? Voss called me before he called you. Wanted to make sure I could cover the program. Okonkwo's damaged leg shifted as he adjusted his stance. You saved my life in Syria. Least I can do is teach some kids how to bandage wounds while you're gone. Reagan took the bag. Don't let them quit. I won't. And Santos, keep an eye on her. She's got something special. Okonkwo smiled. I know. She reminds me of someone. Reagan shouldered the bag. The helicopter's rotors were spinning up, filling the air with sound and fury. See you when I get back. You better. Elena would kill me if I let anything happen to you. Reagan climbed aboard without looking back. The briefing happened mid-flight. Commander Nathan Voss was already on the helicopter, along with 8 SEALs Reagan didn't recognize by face, but knew by reputation. Team 4's Alpha Platoon, some of the best operators in the world. Here's the situation, Voss said over the headset. We have a CIA asset trapped in a compound outside Aden. High-value intelligence source. The opposition has figured out who he is, and they're closing in. We need to extract him before they do. What's the opposition? Iranian-backed militia. Well-trained, well-equipped. Intel suggests at least 40 fighters in the immediate area with reinforcements available within 20 minutes of contact. Rules of engagement. Weapons free. Anyone who points a gun at us dies. Reagan looked at the SEALs around her. Hard faces, calm eyes. Men who'd done this 100 times before. But she saw something else in their expressions. A wariness. A question. They're wondering if I can handle it, she said quietly to Voss. They know who you are. What you did in Syria. Voss met her eyes. They're wondering if you can do it again. So am I. Good. The ones who aren't scared are the ones who get killed. The insertion went smooth. Helicopter touchdown at 202 clicks from the target compound. The team moved fast and quiet through terrain that reminded Reagan of Syria, all dust and darkness, and the smell of things burning in the distance. The point man, a massive chief named Kowalski, raised a fist. Everyone froze. Reagan's hand found her pistol. Her breath slowed. Her heart rate dropped to 60. Torres's voice in her head. The trick is making them underestimate you. Let them think you're weak. Let them commit. And when they do, you end it. Kowalski signaled all clear. The team moved forward. They reached the compound at 0247. Intelligence had been accurate. 4 guards visible, probably more inside. The target was in the main building, 2nd floor. Voss made the call. Breach in 90 seconds. Cole, you're with me and Rodriguez on the extraction team. Everyone else perimeter security. Reagan nodded. Drew her weapon. Settled into the calm space she'd found in Syria. The place where fear couldn't reach her. The breach was textbook. Explosive charges on the doors. Flashbangs through the windows. The team flowed in like water, each operator moving to their assigned position with mechanical precision. Reagan followed Voss up the stairs, her pistol tracking every shadow. A fighter appeared in a doorway. She put 2 rounds in his chest before her conscious mind registered the threat. He dropped. Didn't move. That's 208. She'd stopped counting after Syria. Started again now. The target was in the 2nd room on the left. Handcuffed to a radiator, face bloody from a beating. He looked up when they entered, eyes wide with terror. "American," he gasped. "You're American. We're here to get you out." Reagan holstered her weapon and dropped to her knees beside him. "Are you injured, besides the face?" "My ribs, they kicked me. Hard to breathe." She ran her hands along his torso, feeling for the telltale grinding of broken bones. Found it on the left side. At least 2 ribs fractured, possibly more. "Voss, we have broken ribs. Possible internal bleeding. He needs to move slow." "We don't have slow. Enemy QRF is already mobilizing. We've got maybe 10 minutes before this place is crawling with hostiles." Reagan looked at the asset. His face was gray with pain. "Can you walk? I'll crawl if I have to." "Good man." She cut his cuffs, helped him to his feet. He gasped when his ribs shifted, grabbed her shoulder so hard she knew there'd be bruises tomorrow. If there was a tomorrow. The exfil route was compromised. They made it 50 meters from the compound before the first shots cracked past Reagan's head. The team scattered into cover, returning fire with controlled bursts. "Cole, keep the asset down." Voss was already moving, directing his operators into defensive positions. Reagan pulled the asset behind a low wall, shielding him with her body. His breathing was getting worse. Labored. Wet. Internal bleeding. She'd heard that sound before. "Stay with me," she said. "What's your name?" "Jamil." "My name is Jamil." "Okay, Jamil. I need you to focus on my voice. We're going to get you out of here, but you need to stay conscious. Can you do that?" "I will try." The firefight intensified. Reagan could hear the SEALs engaging multiple contacts, their weapons distinctive against the crackling AK-47s of the militia. She pulled a chest seal from her kit. If Jamil had a pneumothorax developing, she needed to be ready. "Jamil, I'm going to check your breathing. This might hurt." She pressed her ear to his chest. Listened. The left lung was compromised. Air was leaking into his chest cavity, collapsing the lung incrementally. Tension pneumothorax. If she didn't act, he'd be dead in minutes. "I need to do a procedure. It's going to hurt like hell, but it'll save your life." Jamil's eyes met hers. "Do it." She found the landmark. Second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. Drew her needle decompression kit. A bullet sparked off the wall inches from her head. She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate. The needle went in. Air rushed out with a hiss. Jamil gasped as his lung re-expanded. "Better, much better." Reagan taped the seal in place, grabbed Jamil's arm, and prepared to move. "Voss, target is stabilized, but critical. We need that extract now." "Working on it. Kowalski, can you clear a path to secondary LZ?" "Negative. Too many hostiles between us and the clearing." Reagan looked at the terrain. The secondary LZ was 300 meters northeast. Between them and it were at least 20 militia fighters. There was another option, a dry riverbed running west. It would add 5 minutes to their extraction time, but the cover was better. Commander, there's a wadi running west from our position. It leads to a clearing about 400 meters out. Can you redirect the helo? Voss considered for half a second. Do it. Everyone we're moving to alternate extraction. Cole takes point with the asset. Everyone else suppressive fire on my mark. Reagan pulled Jamil to his feet. Can you run? I can try. Good enough? Voss raised his hand. 3, 2, 1, mark. The team opened up with everything they had. Reagan grabbed Jamil and ran. The wadi was shallow, but offered enough cover to move fast. Reagan pulled Jamil along, ignoring the pain in her shoulders, ignoring the rounds snapping over their heads. 200 meters, 150, 100. A fighter appeared ahead of them. Rising from concealment, AK-47 leveling at Reagan's chest. She shot him twice in the face without breaking stride. 209. The clearing opened ahead. Reagan could hear the helicopter approaching rotors beating the air. 50 meters. 20. 10. They burst into the clearing as the Black Hawk touched down. Reagan threw Jamil toward the open door, turned, and laid down covering fire as the rest of the team emerged from the wadi. Kowalski went down. Reagan saw it happen. Saw the big chief stumble, saw the blood spray from his thigh, saw him collapse 10 meters from the helicopter. She didn't think, just moved. She sprinted to Kowalski, grabbed his vest, and dragged. He was easily 240 pounds of muscle and gear. She felt something tear in her shoulder. Didn't care. Leave me, Kowalski gasped. Shut up. She pulled him the last 10 meters. Hands reached down from the helicopter and hauled him aboard. Reagan scrambled in after him. Go now. The helicopter lifted off banking hard as tracer rounds streaked past the windows. Reagan was already working on Kowalski's leg. Femoral artery hit. Same wound she'd treated on Okonkwo in Syria. Tourniquet, she shouted. Someone handed her one. She got it high and tight on his thigh, twisted until the bleeding slowed. You're going to be fine, she told him. I've seen worse. Kowalski's face was gray. You're a crazy woman. You know that. I've been told. He almost laughed, then passed out. The debrief happened at Djibouti. Jamil was in surgery. Kowalski was stabilized, already cracking jokes about his new scar. The rest of the team had minor wounds. Nothing serious. Voss found Reagan sitting alone outside the medical facility, staring at her hands. They were still covered in dried blood. Hell of a night, he said, settling beside her. Yeah. Kowalski would have died if you hadn't gone back for him. Maybe. No, maybe about it. I've seen femoral bleeds. He had minutes at most. Reagan didn't respond. You know what the team's calling you. I don't want to know. Too bad. They're calling you Doc Torres. Voss let that sink in. They said you move like him. Think like him. Fight like him. Reagan's throat tightened. I'm not him. No, you're you, and that's enough. Voss stood. Get some sleep. We fly back to Norfolk in 6 hours. The program, my students. Okonkwo says they're doing fine. He also says Santos has been asking about you every day. Reagan almost smiled. She's going to be something special. She already is. You made sure of that. He walked away. Reagan sat alone in the darkness, Torres's trident warm against her chest. She pulled out his letter. Read it for the 1,000th time. You're ready. You've been ready since the day I met you. Now go prove it. She looked at the blood on her hands, at the medical facility where 2 men lived because of what she'd done tonight. I'm trying, Gabe, she whispered. I'm trying. The flight home was quiet. Reagan slept most of the way, the kind of deep, dreamless sleep that only came after combat, when the body finally surrendered to exhaustion. When she woke, Voss was sitting across from her with a folder in his hands. What's that? Your Bronze Star citation came through. For Syria. He handed it to her. Official now. Navy's going to do a ceremony. Lots of press, lots of brass. Reagan took the folder, but didn't open it. I don't want a ceremony. Too bad. Admiral Vance is personally pinning it on you. She says it's important for visibility, for showing young women what's possible. Torres deserved this medal. Not me. Torres has a Navy Cross, posthumous. Voss's voice softened. You both deserve recognition, Reagan. Stop fighting it. She opened the folder, read the citation. Her actions in Syria sanitized and formalized, but still recognizable. Petty Officer Second Class Reagan. Cole distinguished herself through extraordinary heroism in action against an armed enemy. She closed the folder. When's the ceremony? 2 weeks, Norfolk, the same day as the Gray Falcon program's first graduation. Reagan looked up sharply. They're graduating. The ones who made it, 8 candidates including Santos and Chen. Voss smiled. Okonkwo says they're ready, says you built something special. 8 candidates. 8 new combat medics who would deploy to places Reagan had been faced dangers. Reagan had faced save lives. Reagan couldn't. Torres's legacy multiplied. I'll do the ceremony, she said. For them, not for me. Whatever gets you there? The helicopter began its descent toward Norfolk. Reagan looked out the window at the coastline below the naval base, spreading along the water like a gray steel city. She was coming home. And for the first time in a long time, she felt like she'd earned the right to call it that. The graduation ceremony was scheduled for 900 on a Saturday. Reagan arrived at 0600, her dress blues pressed sharp enough to cut glass Torres's trident, and her new bronze star pinned side by side above her ribbons. The ceremony hall was empty, except for the rows of chairs that would soon hold family members' naval brass, and the press corps that had been following her story since the trial. She walked to the podium and stood there alone, practicing what she would say. Nothing felt right. How do you summarize everything that had happened? How do you put into words the pain, the loss, the transformation? How do you tell 8 young sailors that they're about to enter a world that will break them in ways they can't imagine? And that's exactly how it should be. You're here early. Reagan turned. Elena Torres stood in the doorway, Maya beside her. I couldn't sleep. Elena walked toward her heels, clicking against the floor. Maya ran ahead and threw her arms around Reagan's waist. I made you something, Maya said, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. For your graduation. Reagan knelt down and opened the paper. It was a drawing crayon on construction paper. A woman in a blue uniform standing next to a tall man with a big smile. Behind them, a group of smaller figures in uniforms. Above everything, a golden bird. That's you, Maya pointed to the woman. And that's my daddy watching from heaven. And those are the people you're helping. Reagan's vision blurred. She blinked hard, trying to keep the tears from falling. What's the bird? A falcon. Mommy told me your school is named after one. Maya looked up at her with Torres's eyes. Daddy's favorite bird was a falcon. Did you know that? Reagan hadn't known. She looked at Elena. Gabe always said falcons were perfect hunters. Fast, precise, unstoppable. Elena's voice was soft. He said if he could be any animal, he'd be a falcon. Because they never miss. Reagan pulled Maya into a tight hug. This is the best gift anyone's ever given me. I'm going to keep it forever. Promise. Promise. The hall began filling at 0830. Reagan watched from backstage as families took their seats. She saw Chen's parents, elderly Chinese immigrants who'd flown in from San Francisco. Saw Santos's mother, a single woman who worked 2 jobs and had somehow raised a warrior. Saw Kowalski, still on crutches from Yemen, sitting in the front row with the other SEAL Team 4 operators who'd come to see the program they'd helped inspire. Okonkwo appeared beside her. Nervous? Terrified. Good. Means you care. He handed her a folder. Speech notes, in case you forget what you wanted to say. Reagan didn't open it. I already know what I'm going to say. Yeah, what's that? The truth. Admiral Patricia Vance arrived at 0855. She was everything Reagan had imagined. Tall, composed with silver hair, cropped military short, and eyes that had seen every horror the Navy could produce. The first female vice chief of naval operations. A living legend. Petty Officer Cole. Vance extended her hand. I've been looking forward to meeting you. The honor is mine, Admiral. No, the honor is definitely mine. Vance's grip was strong. What you've built here, what you've survived to build it, that's what leadership looks like. Not rank, not medals. The willingness to stand up when everyone else sits down. I just did what needed doing, ma'am. That's exactly what I mean. The ceremony began at 0900 sharp. Voss delivered the opening remarks, spoke about the Grey Falcon program's origins, its mission, its standards, spoke about the 8 candidates who'd survived everything thrown at them and emerged stronger. Then he called Reagan to the podium. She walked out with Maya's drawing folded in her pocket and Torres's letter pressed against her heart. 200 faces stared up at her. Cameras clicked. Someone coughed in the back row. Reagan gripped the podium and began. 3 years ago, I watched a good man die. The room went silent. His name was Gabriel Torres. He was a Navy SEAL, a father, a husband, and the finest operator I ever served with. He died in my arms in a tunnel in Syria, and his last words were about his daughter, about the promises he'd made her, about the life he wouldn't get to live. She paused. Let the weight settle. I've spent every day since then trying to be worthy of his sacrifice, trying to honor what he taught me. And for a long time I thought that meant being the best, the fastest, the most skilled. I thought if I could just save enough people, kill enough enemies, prove myself beyond any doubt, I could somehow make up for the fact that he died. And I didn't. Her voice cracked. She let it. I was wrong. She looked at her 8 graduates sitting in the front row in their dress uniforms. Torres didn't die so I could be a hero. He died so I could be a teacher, a leader, someone who passes on what matters to the next generation so they can pass it on to the next. That's the real legacy. Not medals, not kills. People. Santos was crying. Chen was trying hard not to. Each of you is about to enter a world that will test everything you are. You'll face situations where the training isn't enough, where the protocols fail, where you have to make decisions that haunt you for the rest of your life. And in those moments, you'll have to choose who you want to be. Reagan stepped away from the podium, walked to the edge of the stage. Choose to be the person who doesn't give up. Choose to be the person who fights for the ones who can't fight for themselves. Choose to be the person who stands between the darkness and the light, even when the cost is everything. She reached into her pocket and pulled out Maya's drawing. This was given to me this morning by a 9-year-old girl who lost her father because of the work we do. She drew a picture of me standing next to him, watching over all of you, and she called the bird above us a falcon. Reagan held up the drawing. Falcons never miss. That's what Gabriel Torres believed. That's what I want you to believe. Not that you'll never fail. You will. But that when it matters most, when someone's life depends on you, you'll find whatever it takes to get it done. She looked at each graduate in turn. You are Gray Falcon, first class. You carry Torres's legacy now. Don't let him down. The applause started slowly and built to a roar. The Bronze Star ceremony followed immediately. Admiral Vance stood at the podium with Reagan before her, the medal gleaming in its presentation case. Petty Officer Second Class Reagan Cole distinguished herself through extraordinary heroism in action against an armed enemy of the United States on March 15, 2024, in Raqqa Province, Syria. Vance read the citation. The facts Reagan had lived through sanitized into military language but still recognizable. The ambush, the wounded, the 6 kills, the impossible evacuation. Petty Officer Cole's actions saved the lives of 3 critically wounded Special Operations personnel and directly contributed to the success of a vital intelligence operation. Her courage under fire, her selfless devotion to her teammates, and her unwavering commitment to the mission reflect the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. Vance pinned the medal to Reagan's chest. On behalf of a grateful nation, it's my honor to present you with the Bronze Star with Combat Va. The cameras flashed. The audience applauded. Reagan stood at attention, feeling the weight of the medal next to Torres's trident, and thought about everyone who should have been there to share this moment. Torres, Maria Delgado, all the people she'd lost along the way. She hoped they could see her now. The reception lasted 2 hours. Reagan shook hands until her fingers ached, answered questions until her voice went hoarse, smiled for photographs until her face hurt. Finally, she escaped to a quiet corner and found Santos waiting for her. Ma'am? You don't have to call me that anymore. You graduated. I know, but you'll always be my instructor. Santos hesitated. I wanted to thank you. For everything. You did the work. I just showed you the door. No. You did more than that. Santos's eyes were bright. You showed me what was possible. Before I met you, I thought women in combat medicine were tolerated at best. I thought we had to be twice as good just to be considered adequate. That's still true, unfortunately. Maybe, but now I know it's possible to be twice as good. Because you did it. Santos straightened. I'm deploying in 3 weeks. SEAL Team 8, first combat medic in their history. Reagan's heart swelled. You're going to be amazing. I'm going to try, Santos saluted. Thank you, Petty Officer Cole, for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. She walked away before Reagan could respond. Elena found Reagan an hour later, sitting on a bench outside the ceremony hall, with Maya asleep on her shoulder. She crashed about 20 minutes ago. All that excitement. Reagan looked down at the little girl's peaceful face. She's beautiful. She's just like her father. Can't sit still, has to be part of everything, falls asleep the moment the action stops. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. What happens now? Elena asked. I keep teaching, keep building the program, keep trying to honor Gabe's memory. And the deployments Yemen almost got you killed. Reagan touched the Bronze Star on her chest. I can't walk away from the mission. Not completely. If they need me, I'll go. Even after everything you've been through. Especially after everything I've been through. Reagan looked at Elena. Your husband taught me that service isn't about what's safe. It's about what's necessary. Sometimes what's necessary is dangerous. Elena was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached over and squeezed Reagan's hand. He would be so proud of you. You know that, right? I hope so. I know so. I see him in everything you do. The way you lead. The way you teach. The way you never give up on anyone." Elena's eyes glistened. "You're carrying his spirit forward, Reagan. That's all any of us can do when we lose someone we love." Maya stirred. Her eyes fluttered open. "Are we going home now?" "Yes, sweetheart. We're going home." Maya looked up at Reagan. "Will you come visit us? I want to show you my puppy." Reagan's breath caught. "You got a puppy? Mommy said Daddy would have wanted me to have one. His name is Gabe." "Of course it was. I would love to visit, anytime you want." Maya hugged her tight. "Promise." Reagan hugged her back, feeling Torres's trident press against her chest. "Promise." 1 year later, Reagan stood before the second graduating class of the Gray Falcon program. 16 graduates this time, half of them women. The program had expanded beyond Norfolk, training sites at Coronado Camp Lejeune and Pearl Harbor, a full curriculum that had been adopted by 3 other NATO countries, a waiting list of candidates that stretched 2 years into the future. Vera Santos was there fresh from her first deployment with SEAL Team 8. She'd saved 4 lives in Afghanistan, performed surgery under fire twice, and been recommended for her own Bronze Star. Chen was an instructor, now running the trauma simulation module that had once broken him. His candidates feared and respected him in equal measure. The Delgado-Torres Protocol had been implemented across all branches of the military. Harassment complaints were up 60%, not because abuse had increased, but because people finally felt safe reporting it. Conviction rates for abuse had tripled. Harlan was in year 2 of his 30-year sentence. He'd written Reagan a letter from prison 6 months after the trial. She'd burned it without reading. Reagan delivered her graduation speech with Torres's trident on her chest and Maya's drawing framed on the podium beside her. "You are the second class of Gray Falcon. You carry the legacy of everyone who came before you. Don't forget that. Don't let it become routine." She looked at the faces before her. Young, determined, scared, just like she'd been once. "The world is going to test you in ways you can't imagine. You'll fail sometimes. You'll lose people you love. You'll question whether any of it matters." She paused. "It matters. Every life you save, every person you train, every moment you choose courage over comfort, it matters. Maybe not on the scale of history, but on the scale of one human being who gets to go home to their family because you were there when they needed you." Her voice strengthened. "That's enough. That's everything." The ceremony ended. The family celebrated. The graduates received their insignia and their assignments. Reagan stayed behind after everyone left, sitting alone in the empty hall with Maya's drawing in her hands. Okonkwo found her there an hour later. "Still here?" "Just thinking." He lowered himself into the chair beside her, his leg finally healed enough to abandon the crutches. "About what?" "About whether Torres would recognize me anymore. Whether the person I've become is who he wanted me to be." Okonkwo was quiet for a moment. "You know what he said to me in Syria right before the mission went sideways? What? He said you were going to change things. Not the Navy. Not the military. Things. The whole damn world." Okonkwo smiled. "I thought he was being dramatic. Turns out he was being prophetic. I haven't changed anything. I just got lucky." "Lucky?" Okonkwo laughed. "You dragged 3 wounded operators through a tunnel while killing 6 enemy fighters. You survived Harlan and exposed a system that was protecting abusers for decades. You built a training program that's saving lives across 4 countries. You went back to Yemen when you didn't have to and pulled me out of a firefight that should have killed me." He leaned forward. "That's not luck, Reagan. That's who you are. That's who Torres saw when everyone else saw a scared 21-year-old corpseman who didn't belong." Reagan looked at the trident on her chest, the medal beside it, the drawing in her hands. He believed in me before I believed in myself. That's what great leaders do. They see potential before it becomes reality. Okonkwo stood. Now you do the same for others. That's the legacy, not the medals or the headlines. The people you believe in who go on to believe in someone else. He held out his hand. Come on. Voss is throwing a party at his place. You're the guest of honor. I'm tired. You can be tired tomorrow. Tonight you celebrate what you've built. Reagan took his hand and let him pull her to her feet. The party lasted until midnight. Reagan slipped away at 2300, found a quiet spot on Voss's back porch, and pulled out her phone. She had one call to make. Elena answered on the second ring. Reagan, is everything okay? Everything's fine. I just wanted to hear your voice. It's late there. I know. I couldn't sleep without talking to you first. Reagan leaned against the railing. The second class graduated today. 16 of them. The best I've ever trained. That's wonderful. It is. But I keep thinking about what comes next. How many more classes? How many more years? How long before the mission passes to someone else? Elena was quiet for a moment. Are you thinking about retiring? No, not yet, but someday. Reagan looked up at the stars. I've been doing this for 5 years now. Combat training, combat again. At some point, I have to decide what kind of life I want beyond the uniform. What do you want? The question hit harder than Reagan expected. I don't know. I've never let myself think about it. There was always another mission, another class, another crisis. She paused. But lately I've been thinking about Maya, about watching her grow up, about being there for the moments that matter. She talks about you constantly, tells everyone at school that her godmother is a war hero. Reagan smiled despite herself. Godmother, that's what she calls you, has been for months. Elena's voice softened. We'd love to have you closer, Reagan. If you ever decide you want a different kind of life. Maybe someday. Whenever you're ready. We'll be here. Reagan ended the call and sat alone in the darkness thinking about futures she'd never allowed herself to imagine. The next morning she returned to the Gray Falcon training facility and found a new group of candidates waiting in formation. 24 of them. Fresh faces. Terrified eyes. No idea what they were about to face. Reagan walked to the front of the formation and looked at each one in turn. My name is Petty Officer First Class Reagan Cole. For the next 12 weeks, I will teach you how to save lives under conditions that will make you wish you'd never been born. A hand went up. Young woman, early 20s, with determination carved into every line of her face. Yes. Petty Officer Cole, is it true you've been deployed to combat 12 times 14? And you've saved more than 50 lives. I stopped counting at 30. Numbers don't matter. What matters is the one person in front of you who needs help right now. The young woman nodded. I'm Hospital Man 3rd Class Rivera. I volunteered for this program because I want to be like you. Reagan heard the echo of Santos's words from 3 years ago, heard her own response. But this time she said something different. Good, now prove it. She turned to face the full formation. 12 weeks, everything you have, everything you are. By the end, you'll either be Gray Falcon or you'll be gone. She paused. Any questions? Silence. Then let's begin. 5 years after that first day at Norfolk, Reagan, Cole stood at Gabriel Torres's grave in Arlington National Cemetery. She'd made this pilgrimage every year on the anniversary of his death. Brought flowers. Talked to him about everything that had happened. Let herself cry in the only place she allowed herself to be weak. This year was different. This year she brought Maya. The girl was 14 now, taller than Reagan with her father's eyes and her mother's strength. She'd decided she wanted to be a doctor, not a combat medic, a trauma surgeon, someone who saved lives in hospitals instead of battlefields. Torres would have been proud. "Hi, Daddy," Maya said, kneeling beside the headstone. "I got straight A's again, and I made the varsity soccer team. Mom says I have your competitive streak." Reagan stood back, watching. "Reagan's been teaching me some medical stuff. Nothing crazy, just first aid. She says everyone should know how to save a life." Maya traced her father's name with her finger. "I miss you, every day. But I know you're watching. I can feel it." She placed a small falcon figurine beside the flowers Reagan had brought. "This is for you, to remind you that we're still flying." Maya stood. Reagan put her arm around her shoulders. "He's proud of you," Reagan said. "I know it." "You think so? I know so." They stood together in silence, 2 generations of warriors honoring the man who'd made them both possible. Finally, Reagan stepped forward and knelt beside the headstone. "Hey, Gabe, it's been another year." She touched the cold marble. "I kept my promise. Every day for 5 years. I saved lives. I trained people. I built something that will outlast me." Her voice caught. "And I finally learned what you were trying to teach me all along." She pressed Torres's trident against the headstone, leaving it there for a moment. "The mission isn't about being the best. It's about making others better. It's about believing in people before they believe in themselves. It's about planting seeds you'll never see bloom." She stood. "Thank you for believing in me when I couldn't. Thank you for seeing something in me that nobody else saw. Thank you for giving your life so others could live." She saluted. "Rest easy, Chief. We've got it from here." Maya took her hand. "Ready to go home?" Reagan looked at the girl beside her, at the legacy she'd helped nurture, at the future walking next to her in a teenager's body. "Yeah," she said. "I'm ready." They walked out of the cemetery together, leaving Gabriel Torres at peace. And in that moment, Reagan Cole finally understood what he'd been trying to tell her all along. The greatest victory wasn't surviving the battle. It was building something worth surviving for. That was the promise she'd kept. That was the legacy she'd built. And that was enough.